Hi, world of Facebook. Jackie Berman here from TBA Law, and I have been away for a week, but keeping up with doing a Facebook Live every week just to give you a little bit more information so that you can, be informed before you come along to an appointment, or you can do your research. So today I wanted to talk about testamentary trusts. So a little bit more of a complex topic really, but important. So in fact, there are lots of types of testamentary trusts. It basically means that it's a trust set up in your will. It's testamentary, so it doesn't come into play until you actually pass away. But when people talk about a testamentary trust, most of the time they're actually talking about a testamentary discretionary trust, which is like a family trust that's set up in your will. So what's the benefit of setting up a testamentary trust in your will? Well, look, firstly, there are asset protection benefits. Secondly, there's tax benefits. So those are some of the things to think about, and also it's not an ongoing cost. So it's a trust that doesn't actually take effect until you pass away. So there's nothing ongoing, it just sits there dormant. So to give you a couple of examples about how it could be used, I've got a couple of little case studies. So the first is where a couple decided not to use a testamentary trust in their wills, and it would have been the perfect opportunity to do so. So Peter and Susan, their names have been changed, in their early 60s, 3 adult children, 2 of which were married, 1 was single, decided to do ordinary wills, everything to each other in the event that they both passed away, to the kids equally. Unfortunately, they both passed away in an accident while they were travelling, so the 3 kids were inheriting the estate, a couple of $1 million. At the time that their parents passed away, one of the children was in a stable marriage, the other was going through a separation, and the 3rd child, who was single, had their own business, which was in trouble, and he was looking at insolvency. So unfortunately, because they hadn't set up testamentary trusts, those the money that they inherited went into their own name, so there was no protections to be provided for. So the child that was going through a separation, her inheritance ended up forming part of the property pool for that split, so her husband ended up benefiting from that. The youngest son, who was single and going through an insolvency event, unfortunately the creditors also got a hold of the inheritance to satisfy the debts that he owed. Now, if their parents had set up the testamentary trust in their wills, their inheritance would have gone into trust for them instead of their own names. The money would have been protected from creditors, and at worst, for the child who was separating, it would have formed part of a financial benefit for her. So she may have gotten less out of the property pool of the relationship, but the inheritance would not have been included in the property pool. So that's an example where it could have been used. An example where it has been used was not set up for children, but set up for the wife. So this was a scenario where a husband and wife set up testamentary trusts in their will for their spouses as well as their children. So the husband ended up passing away. The kids were still minors, so fairly young, and there was some property that they held separately, and there was life insurance and super. So we had it all filtered through the will, so it got into the testamentary trust. So let's use round figures. There was about $1 million of inheritance that the wife got into the testamentary trust. They had joint property as well, so she had other assets outside of that $1 million, but this was what ended up in the estate and then in the trust. So if she had taken that as a lump sum directly in her name, She could have used it for various reasons, but she probably just would have had it invested or put somewhere, and it would have been earning income over time in her personal name, and she would be paying roughly, if she was getting $60,000 a year extra income on investments of the $1 million, she would have been paying about $22,000 in tax on that. So having about, $38,000 or so extra income a year. However, luckily, they had set up testamentary trusts in their will. So that $1 million went into trust in a separate entity than her name. It was invested, so it's still earning about $60,000 a year. Now, they had 2 minor children. So the tax benefits in a testamentary trust are for minor children mainly, because you can pull out tax-free income in their names at a marginal rate. So she was able to take out $20,000 a year in her name and $20,000 a year in each of her kids' name from the trust. So that's $60,000 a year. And the kids were tax-free, so she only had to pay income tax on her $20,000, which is about $2,000. So she saved about $21,000 tax per year by having it in the testamentary trust. And so she had an additional, $58,000 a year income rather than the $38,000 or so. So quite beneficial in that scenario. And also, if she got married in the future, that inheritance she got from her husband was in the testamentary trust for his children, so it wouldn't go to a future spouse of hers. So that's the other benefit. So there you go. Testamentary trusts, a little bit complex to get your head around, but worth it potentially for the benefits that you can get, particularly because there's just a small upfront cost initially to get it into your will, but no ongoing costs at all. So, protection for assets, as I said, from creditors and from separation, protection from future spouses, and also the tax benefits. There's income splitting, which is often why accountants like family trusts, but there's additional tax benefits when it's a testamentary trust. So there you go. Hopefully I simplified testamentary trusts as much as I could for you. If you have any questions, I do have some brochures that I can provide with those case studies in them, so you can look at it a little bit closer to get your head around it. Or if you want to ask me any questions, of course, you can make an appointment or email. So thanks and goodbye today from Facebook.